Well, who will win in a fight between Cabba and DBZ Beerus? Yes, I'm referring to Beerus in the Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods movie from 2013. Again, the Cabba fans have lost their mind for about the second time I think this year, and they have now assigned a new meta trying to get Cabba over Beerus of all people. So, let's talk about these arguments and explain why they're absolutely asinine. Now, I did want to start with the scaling chain, however, I kind of feel like I'm rushing it, so I'm going to dial it back a little bit. So I'm basically going to just walk it back and essentially talk about why people view DBZ Beerus to be so weak in the first place, and it's not good. The reason why people view DBZ Beerus to be so weak is the sheer fact of how there is no clash between Goku and Beerus that affects the entirety of the macrocosm and almost destroys everything inside of it in the movie. However, in the anime and the manga, that feat is repeated and consistently shown. And while yes, it's true that this feat does not happen in the movie and only in the anime and manga, just because that's where the feat only happens, that does not mean that we're all of a sudden at a new tier of power when it comes down to Dragon Ball Super versus Dragon Ball Z. A feat happening in one and not the other of two different adaptations does not mean that they're referring to two different levels of power. Not inherently. Instead, it could simply just be another way to convey the exact same power, just in a different manner. The argument honestly just breaks down with these people really trying to imply that the difference in depiction inherently means a difference in power, and that's just, again, not presented or proven. For example, this is like me saying Naruto in 6-pass Sage mode during the Boruto era is not stronger than Madara in his 6-pass form because Naruto didn't significantly affect the planet, meanwhile Madara has. Do you see the disconnect there and why that doesn't make any sense? In the argument, they're essentially conflating did and didn't with could and couldn't. These are two different words that imply two different scenarios entirely. One implies the inability to do something and the other implies the unwillingness to do something. So no, this argument is not viable enough to assert that Dragon Ball Super Beerus is stronger than the one seen in the Dragon Ball Z movie. It's just not presented or positive. And there are other ways to get around it without just sheer skepticism. Like, for example, you can use the fact that Kid Buu is stated to be able to make the entire universe go poof. Verbatim, that's like literally stated to us. This implies an instantaneous vaporization of the entirety of the macrocosm. Now, I'm mentioning this because the statement that Goku makes is him assuming a hypothetical Kid Buu. Now, this matters for one basic reason. There are multiple statements spread across multiple promotional guides highlighting the fact that Beerus has power that supersedes all, and the moment that these statements are being made is referring to times before Goku even achieved Super Saiyan God. Like, for example, during the fight with Super Saiyan 3 Goku on King Kai's planet, Beerus has a statement actively saying that he is the strongest and that he is the power above all. Even Goku makes a statement saying things like Super Vegeta won't be able to even touch this Beerus. So again, this massively suppressed Beerus is already stated to be above Kid Buu on astronomical levels, and the same Kid Buu that could one-shot the universe at full powers. Now, another way you can get around it is by tying the Dragon Ball Super manga and the Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods movie into one continuity. Now, this is a little more shaky, so again, take this with a grain of salt, but if you can pull it off in argumentation, that's perfect. In chapter 3 of Dragon Ball Super, there's a statement given to us telling us that if you want to see the entirety of the party scene in full, go check out the Dragon Ball Z movie. Now, this was added by the editorial staff. This was not something that was done by Toyotaro or Toriyama, but again, the editorial staff does have some kind of power over canonicity when it comes down to creating Dragon Ball. So much so to where they were even able to convince Akira Toriyama to create androids 19 and 20 and even Cell himself. Not only that, but the editorial staff literally serves to fix up and adjust the Dragon Ball series. So again, to say that they don't hold any kind of relevant weight in terms of canonicity just makes no sense authoritatively. Now, obviously, this will get hit with the typical arguments of, well, they take place in different areas, so that can't really be canon. But again, this would be a basic Nirvana fallacy, which quite literally, yes, in a perfect world, that would be the case. However, again, this is the real world where mistakes can happen. Retroactive inclusion is a thing, and more on that, changes can be made later on down the line. And saying that these individual events lead to the conclusion that the overall totality of the continuity is different is a composition fallacy that just does not line up logically, especially when we have direct confirmation from official sources telling us to use this as a benchmark for canon guide. Now again, take that with a grain of salt, use it if you want to, don't. I really don't give a fuck. With that said, moving on to the chain skill. The chain scaling goes as follows, and yes, it's very stupid, but bear with me. Base Cabba relative to base Vegeta in the Universe 6 vs 7 tournament arc. Universe 6 vs 7 tournament arc base Goku and Vegeta are relative. They're both stronger than their retrospective selves in Resurrection F. These versions are then stronger than Goku in his Super Saiyan God state during the fight with Beerus. That Goku was able to destroy the entire macrocosm, something that DBZ Beerus quote-unquote did not do, thus Goku is stronger. Now, I've already addressed the whole difference in depiction versus difference in strength argument that's already been put in the water and I've killed it. So for now, let's move on to the next piece of scaling, which talks about base Goku and Vegeta in the revival of F, which is stronger than Super Saiyan God. That is not the case. People are confusing base with Saiyan Beyond God, where they can gain control of God Ki in their base forms. Those are not the same thing. This phenomenon is outright confirmed in the Revival of F art book, directly confirmed in the Dragon Ball Super anime and manga. So with that being said, there quite literally is no argument besides the fact of people trying to claim that when it comes down to the statements made about Goku absorbing God Ki, it's not what it means to them. To them, it simply refers to Goku ascending to godlike levels with a regular ki. And this isn't really true. People then tend to use the fact that Goku and Vegeta were then sensed in their Saiyan Beyond God forms as evidence for them not actually using God Ki. However, this is not a good argument. The reason why they could still be sensed is because they were not fully tapped into their divinity. They did not change form. The presence of their mortal energy was still there, and more on that, God Ki even gives off a presence that can be felt by mortals, which then leads to these mortals misconstruing or misinterpreting it as key signatures, and that's where you get statements like so. For example, it'd be like a meter that can only detect gasoline in vehicles, not being able to detect or sense an electric car, but can sense a hybrid one. You can also use the idea that power is used as the defining word to refer back to ki on numerous, if not most often occasions. And like I said before, the Resurrection F art book. I would have just told you to go back and watch my first video covering Saiyan Beyond God, but I wanted to kind of streamline the points made in that video here, as I never really gave the analogy about the gasoline sensor and whatnot. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to make it a little bit easier to understand so that way people don't kind of get confused. So to clarify, Goku has the ability to absorb God Ki into his base form, and that happens during the fight with Beerus. He absorbs it into his very essence and then unconsciously calls part of it forth, and then combines that in tandem with his Super Saiyan form. This is kind of like how when Goku uses like Ultra Instinct and taps into his divine energy to do that, but can still do so in his regular and base forms. See my point? And now because of the Super Saiyan multiplier, that small amount of God Ki in tandem with normal Ki is equal to the full extent of the ritual version of Super Saiyan God. Fast forward to Resurrection F, time has passed and Goku and Vegeta have now both gained access to Saiyan Beyond God in their base form states, and you can even argue that Goku and Vegeta in the base Saiyan Beyond God state in Resurrection F are stronger than Goku in his Super Saiyan God variant of it in the fight with Beerus. So no base version of Goku was stronger than his Super Saiyan God or his Super Saiyan plus God Ki state. That's just never shown unless he is actively using God Ki. And that kicks into the final stage of the scaling, which talks about Cabba being relative to base Vegeta. Now I'm going to give you again both arguments that you can use to contest this idea, which again can be given to you if you simply just watch the fight. So let's start with base to base Cabba versus Vegeta. The fight starts with Cabba taking a serious fighting stance and Vegeta being ever so casual with literally no spacing of his legs, his arms crossed, his back slouched. He is not taking Cabba seriously. Cabba then makes the charge and attempts to overtake Vegeta with a flurry of attacks, to which Vegeta responds to every single one of them with ease. Even when Cabba actually does break through Vegeta's defenses and get a hit off on him to the gut, it does not do any lasting damage whatsoever. Contrast to when Vegeta does an actual kick to Cabba, it sends him flying back and it has him tuckered out. Cabba's on his hands and knees huffing and puffing, and he finally decides to rise to his feet and charge up a Gallic gun. Vegeta then lets it get to point blank range to when he finally decides to respond with his own. And we know for a fact that it was weaker when he responded at point blank range because he actively had to implement more ki as a means of equalizing the blast. Vegeta, contrary to popular belief, then says out loud that he and Cabba are equal in strength and that the fight could go on forever. This is another instance that feeds into the interpretation that Cabba and Vegeta are not equals and that Cabba is actually getting trained by Vegeta more often than not. The first instance would quite literally be Vegeta telling Cabba to pace himself. He's instructing Cabba throughout the entirety of the instance. He isn't fighting to crush him, and he isn't fighting to beat him. He's fighting to test his strength, but also to basically cultivate him. This is extrapolated on further in the manga, but just for the anime's sake, we can keep it to what's shown on the screen. Another way to actively counter the idea is to showcase the fact that when Cabba transforms into a Super Saiyan and Vegeta does the same, Vegeta actively tanks one of Cabba's punches directly to the face. He then forces Cabba on the rope, so much so to where Cabba has to hide in the sun's light to mask his movements to where Vegeta can't see him, because he knows Vegeta will be able to stop him. People would then counter this argument by saying that Cabba only has Super Saiyan grade 1 while Vegeta has grade 4. Meanwhile, where has Vegeta ever been stated to have Super Saiyan grade 4? That's never been a statement, never been shown, never been even implied. I've also heard some say that in order to get to Super Saiyan 2, you have to get to grade 4, which is never stated. That's like never implied either. So again, Cabba and Vegeta have the exact same form, and Cabba got tanked actively, further proving that he and Vegeta were never equals. Vegeta was just holding back the entire time and actively lying about what's going on between the two. Another way to put this argument into question is to quite literally get your opponent to prove that Vegeta did in fact use God Ki in this fight, because that was not what this fight was about. This fight was about how far Saiyans in general, I'm talking about overall Saiyans, not in reference to divine energy or divinity, in terms of true Saiyan biology, how far can you go? That was the question, and that was the point of reference Vegeta was trying to grasp. So again, this scaling chain just gets disconnected in every which way. It's not even funny. So no, Cabba is not beating DBZ Beerus. He's not even beating Kid Buu, if I'm being so dead ass with myself. He's not beating Kid Buu. I feel like if I put Cabba in the ring with Kid Buu, Cabba is walking out with the new fucking bunkmate. No bullshit. With that being said, it's been your boy Historic. Be good people, and I'm out. Peace.